So today, ladies and gentlemen, I am super excited because we're actually going to be revisiting an old yet exciting topic. We're going to be ranking every current weapon that resides within the vault of Fortnite from worst to best. With the start of Chapter 2, a ton of weapons actually got sent to the vault, and currently it's home to a lot of really good and both really bad weapons, so this is gonna make for a super interesting video. And actually, lastly, before we do get into it, I gotta tell you about the new merch. So this is technically the third lineup in the Best Life design shirt, and in my opinion, this is by far the most exciting thing we've ever done. These are long sleeve shirts only. We've got this design here, which actually, this shirt is a prototype, so this is going to be a little bit smaller in the shirt that you buy. Image here. Also on the back of the sleeve, it says TheSmithPlays. Absolutely love this design. I just think it's super cool. In the last video, some of you guys were asking about sizes, so I thought I would just mention that as well. So I stand at about 6'3" or 6'4", and while I am pretty lanky, would say I'm not the absolute lankiest. And this is a large. It fits very slim. I think an XL would be just a little bit bigger in the shoulders, so if you're someone that's overly muscular, you might want to look at an XL. But as far as height goes, a large is good for someone who's around 6'3" to probably like 5'11", I would say. And the other thing is, as long as you live in the States, you can 100% get this still before Christmas. Because of customs, it's a little bit harder to say outside of the US as they're shipping from the States, but you should be able to still get them fairly quickly, even if you're going over to Europe or Canada. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys want to get your Best Life shirt, it'll be at the top link in the description. As always, buy one or I will light you on fire. And that's it. Let's get into it. So coming in at the lowest spot on our list, usually the lowest spot on this list, it's still the crossbow. The crossbow has forever been a terrible weapon, and surprisingly, seeing as it hasn't been removed from the vault in forever, still is. Now, I also should mention a few criteria for how we're basing this video. So we won't be looking at any mythic weapons, as we literally just did a video looking at those. And there also won't be any handheld throwable items like grenades or the airstrike, and also no Zapatron. Also no vehicles. And the last thing is that we'll be looking at the gun as the stats were at the time of it being vaulted, not its best peak. And so when you consider all those factors, the crossbow is for sure the worst on this list. Now moving on to our number 38 spot, this is going to be, in my opinion, the scoped revolver. Just one of really the worst weapons we've ever seen in Fortnite. It just didn't hit right. It was supposed to be a hit scan weapon that just didn't really feel like it was hit scan. It did 42 and 44 damage, and there's really so many weapons that hit in this range, like the heavy assault rifle, the infantry rifle, the thermal, there's just a lot of weapons that kind of hit in that very accurate slow shooting range, and this weapon just did not exceed them at all. Scoped revolver was truly terrible. Now, moving on to number 37, this is going to be actually the thermal scoped assault rifle. And this is a weapon that I would actually say feels very similar to the scoped revolver. High damage, but it's really not the easiest to hit with. On top of that, the fact that the thermal is always on made this weapon very frustrating and sometimes difficult to see players. Now, at number 36, this is going to be the original SMG, sometimes referred to as the machine pistol. So originally, this weapon did 10, 11, and 12 damage, but when it got vaulted, it had actually been buffed quite a bit to 14, 15, and 16. So its accuracy was still fairly poor, and that is much worse than any other SMG that we've still seen, but I don't think it's fair to say that the final version of this weapon was the worst thing ever. Still bad, just not the absolute worst. Okay, number 35, we've got the guided missile. The original guided missile was very good, would fit somewhere at the top of our list, but the final version, and the version that got vaulted, was garbage. 74 and 77 damage, a very slow turn radius, and not a very far distance to cover, meant that this thing was really only useful for trick shotting. Now moving on to number 34, this is actually the 6-shooter. This is another weapon that actually appeared on our list looking at the worst weapon from every season, and I gotta say, it is just consistently hated. Really, no one likes the 6-shooter. I didn't love the 6-shooter, and I think that it is an underrated weapon, yet still bad. Again, it's a weapon I don't think is is the absolute worst we've ever seen, but it was pretty awful. Now, I hadn't mentioned this at the very start of this video, but I thought it would be fun to also throw in tier lists for this video, and that is about where I would actually cut off the F tier. Just very poor weapons that are almost always sure to get you killed. Now, moving on to number 33 and the D tier, this is going to be the proximity grenade launcher. I really hated this thing. It was advertised as a noob-friendly weapon, and I just don't think was friendly for anybody to use. It kind of felt like a mix between the grenade launcher and the quad launcher, but was more ineffective than both. It could spam 2 shots at a time, but did 70 damage, and I really don't think this was an effective weapon. And actually at number 32, we've got the gray RPG that was in season 2 for 1 day. It only did 70 damage, and I don't think there's any actual gameplay of it, but I do promise I used it and it existed is what I'm getting at. It only did 70 damage, but I just think the rocket format for this weapon rather than explosive proximity grenades worked a lot better. Yet, I mean, 70 damage is still only 70 damage. And that's actually going to be it for the D tier. Now from here, we're gonna move on to the C tier, which are kind of those weapons that are usable in the early game if you happen to get it, but still very ineffective. The first weapon on our list is the automatic sniper rifle. This was introduced in season 10 and really was just not a very great weapon. Now, a lot of people commented on the last video that I did actually that it did get a bit of a buff with higher damage and a little bit better accuracy, so that at the end of its lifetime, it wasn't so bad, which I actually wasn't aware of. So not a great weapon, but I guess something that was relatively useful if you knew how to use it. Now, moving on to number 30, this is the Burst SMG. The Burst SMG was okay. And that's really all I'm gonna say. When you first dropped into a location and had this thing, it felt okay, assuming that people only had 100 health. Because the green and blue variant did 25 and 26, you could 4-shot someone, which was realistic to do with this thing. That said though, I do think it was certainly one of the worst SMGs we had ever seen. And actually followed by this was another season 9 weapon, and this was the drum shotgun. I think one of the things that really made the drum shotgun stand out as a garbage weapon was just how much the combat shotgun dominated it. That said though, I don't think that this was an absolute F tier weapon. The drum shotgun was bad, but I think in a world where the combat didn't exist, this one was better. If you were to throw it into current day Fortnite, I think again it would probably sit somewhere around the C or maybe B tier. It's a very easy spammable weapon that was good usually for a kill, assuming that the other player didn't have a combat. Overall, it was okay, doing 45, 48, and 50 damage, but nothing spectacular. Now, moving on to number 28, this is going to be the gray sniper of chapter 2. Another thing that really gameplay doesn't exist for because it was only in the game for like a day, but it did exist. I mean, it's a sniper that did 95 damage, which I feel like would be very frustrating to use, but still 95 damage is 95 damage. I mean, like in a late game scenario, 95 damage versus 105 with the blue really isn't going to make or break something. Unless that person happened to have 100 health maybe, and then it might. And sure, it would be a weapon that would be frustrating to get someone down to just 5 HP, but I mean, if they're down to 5 HP, it's not like they're gonna be winning any fights anytime soon. So not great for one-shotting people, but when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it really would have been that terrible. But anyways, moving on to number 27, we've got the infantry rifle in the gray, green, and blue variant. Overall, I think that this weapon is highly underrated. A lot of people hated this weapon because it started out as a non-hit scan weapon, meaning that it had the same drop as snipers. And for a semi-automatic rifle, that it just didn't work. But once this thing moved over to the hit scan, it was actually very good, and that's how it got vaulted. I mean, a blue one would land 40 damage. That is 5 shots to kill someone at max health, which is really good. It basically put up a similar amount of damage as the heavy assault rifle. It just was something you had to be much more accurate with. The problem, obviously, is that you had to reload every 8 shots, which was a bit of a struggle. But overall, I think that this was a pretty okay weapon. Now, moving on to number 26, this is actually the semi-automatic rifle. So something that I didn't realize that a lot of people actually have love for is this weapon. The thing that people liked about this is that it was a little bit more friendly for beginners. If you're not an absolute god with a sniper, you can use this thing, forego about 30 damage, and still be able to land some beefy shots. Plus, a lot of people said that it was something that helped them to get better, figure out the arcs of snipers, and then actually move on to the bolt and heavy. So it was something that I never really liked, but when people explained it to me like that, I was like, okay, it's not terrible. I mean, it's certainly not as good as any other major sniper in the game, but it's not bad either. Now moving on to number 25, this is the suppressed pistol. So the suppressed pistol has basically just been replaced by the 1911, the purple and gold pistol in chapter 2, and then the silencer was taken off of it. Those two weapons played very similarly, except for the fact that the suppressed pistol had much less range. And I think that was really the biggest issue with this thing. It actually had a fairly decent DPS, and if you could land shots, you would shred people. That said though, it seemed like for most players, an SMG was just more effective. And anyways though, that is going to top out our C tier. Now moving on to the B tier, these are the weapons that are good, just not great. Effective early and mid game, but they certainly fall off after a point. At number 24, we have the drum gun. Wasn't a terrible weapon, but there were better SMG alternatives, and it certainly was nothing compared to its original. This is the season 9 version we're talking about. It was just very, very weak. Now moving on to number 23, we've got the tactical assault rifle. So if you think this is a wrong placement, I am very willing to change my mind on this one. I never liked this thing. I never thought it was very useful. But a lot of people liked it. Not enough range for an assault rifle and not as effective as SMGs in my opinion. Yeah. And moving on to number 22, we've got the suppressed scar. The suppressed scar was a pretty overall solid weapon, but at the end of the day, is basically just a silenced blue AR. They both do 33 damage, which isn't quite enough to 3-shot at 100 health. While this one was a little bit more accurate, I think it was overall a fairly average weapon looking back. And then moving on from here, at number 21, we've got the revolver, followed actually by the purple and gold revolver. All 5 variants of this weapon take 4 shots to kill, so there's never really a huge difference using these things, but overall I thought the revolvers were fairly good. If you were accurate with these things, you would do well. Land a headshot, that's a nice easy 100 damage off, so yeah, I liked the revolvers. That said though, not a top tier weapon. Now moving on to number 19, we've got the dual weld pistols. A surprisingly very beefy weapon. Since each shot did 40 damage, it was very easy to land 2 rounds of this and be up to 160 accumulated damage very easily. Land a headshot, nice 88. Oh my god, you were golden. It was a very good weapon early game and actually decent throughout the mid game, but I still feel like it wasn't something able to sort of, what I'm getting at is it was good, just not really able to compete with the top tier weapons as well. Now at number 18, we've got the scoped assault rifle. Really just the epitome of a weapon that is great if you are great. If you have great accuracy, you will shred people with this thing, and I feel like a lot of the other rifles just weren't quite as good. There is an argument that maybe the normal infantry rifle should be up a little higher close to this, but personally, I just feel like the scoped assault rifle was incredible. And actually, I was going to keep the scoped assault rifle in the B tier, but screw it. It's the first of the A tier, which means that we are in some very high level territory now. Moving on to number 17, we have the suppressed SMG. This is a weapon that was great at the start of a game, and realistically you could use it all the way through to the end with no issues. I mean, this thing did as much as the old drum gun, did as much as basically the tactical assault rifle, but was a true SMG. Just such a solid weapon, and it really is something that I miss. Now moving on to number 16, this is the double barrel shotgun. So certainly a fall from grace from its original that did 150 damage, only doing 120 now, but I still think that this is a weapon that is deserving of the A tier. I mean, being able to land 120 damage with any weapon is just really good. As long as you can get up into someone's face with this thing, you would do really well, even at only 120 damage. I mean, shotguns in general are pretty much always A tier weapons, so like that's a fairly low ranking for a shotgun, but overall, I think it still deserves some praise. Now moving on to number 15, this is actually going to be the hand cannon. Say what you want, the hand cannon has seen a lot of ups and downs. I still think that the hand cannon was a very good weapon. Basically, in my opinion, just a better revolver, because you could do more damage, you know, 75 and 78 for 150 headshots. that was solid. At number 14, we've got the hunting rifle. Overall, I would say a very skill-dependent weapon. I'm sure a lot of you guys are thinking about Tfue when this thing was the best. I mean, there's that side of this weapon, but even to the average player, being able to land quick 90s on people is actually like still really good. And I mean, if you land a headshot, you're just smiling. So there was that too. At number 13 though, this is the suppressed bolt. Overall, I feel like the bolt is better than the hunting rifle as it was just so dependent on skill. The average player will probably have a better time with the suppressed bolts, even though the skill cap for the hunting rifle was pretty high. And anyways, at number 12, we've got the grenade launcher. Bit of a change up here in weapon types, an explosive weapon that was overall incredible. I mean, 100 damage, 105 damage, 110. In the legendary variant, you could just get so much destruction and damage downrange on an enemy. It was truly a weapon of chaos. I think a lot of people kind of forgot about this thing and never really considered it to be great, but used effectively, you could devastate squads. But moving on to number 11, we've got the heavy assault rifle. So the final version of this weapon that was vaulted was in gray, green, and blue and did 38, 40, and 42 damage. For an assault rifle, very powerful. It didn't quite have the accuracy and range of an infantry rifle, but I think it certainly made up with that in just its ability to output damage faster. And for much longer because it had such a bigger mag. But actually topping out our number 10 spot, this is the purple and gold variant of the infantry rifle. This was just an incredible gun. Did 42 and 44 damage, which was just a step above the original one. And on top of that, it had a faster reload time with 10 bullets in its magazine versus 8. This weapon was just absolutely capable of shredding people and just getting that shield right off. And I really missed this one. Now, moving on to number 9, we've actually got the Storm Scout Sniper. So this weapon was very similar to the semi-auto sniper. It did 80 and 84 damage, which was just a little bit better than it. But the thing that really stood out about this is you could one-shot people at 200 health if you landed a shot to the head. See, 2.5 times headshot multipliers are huge, and this one had one. And I haven't even mentioned the fact that it would show you where the next storm is going to be. Just a huge added bonus. So this was truly a great weapon. Moving on to number 8, we've got the quad launcher. While each individual rocket only did 80 and 84 damage, this thing was capable of devastating an entire squad in seconds. Because you could spam 4 missiles at a time, you could just delete someone's PlayStation. It was insane and a truly solid weapon. Now moving on to number 7, we've got the heavy shotgun. Really, I think the forgotten shotgun at this point. The heavy was great, man. I absolutely love the heavy, and I really miss it. So it did 74 and 77 damage a shot, but because it had a 2.5 times headshot multiplier again, this made it much more viable. Basically just like a nerfed down combat shotgun that required less accuracy. I really like this weapon, and I gotta say, of all the ones, it's one of the ones I miss the most. At number 6, we've got the light machine gun. Just absolute chaos. With 100 bullets per magazine, this could be spammed, sending out 25 bullets for pretty much an indefinite amount of time. So yeah, it was pretty annoying, but also pretty good. And you know what? I think it's time that we bump things up. And ladies and gentlemen, we are now in the S tier. Coming in at number 5 in the S tier, we have the Flint Knock pistol. Dude, such a fantastic weapon. Truly, again, one of my most missed and favorite of all time. You had 86 damage and 90 damage with a 2 times headshot multiplier. You were landing 180s. Easy. I mean, it was so easy to land shots with this thing because it was shooting out like a gigantic cannonball. And on top of that, you could build as high as you want with no penalty. If you were a good player, no fall damage ever when using this weapon. Dude, it's just such a solid weapon I miss so much. Okay, now at number 4, this is gonna be the heavy sniper. So this thing, I mean, 150, 157 damage a shot. Really, what were you expecting? The thing that was so ridiculous about this, you're in solos, you have 150 health, you've played the game properly, like really, you've done nothing wrong. You can just get sent right back to the lobby with this thing. Just so ridiculous, but so good. Now, number 3, we've got the Boom Bow, another weapon that was just insane. So this thing could do 115 damage a shot and really was just incredible at taking people out. I mean, in a squad fight, it was so easy to just pick someone off peeking. There's 100 shield gone, easy. Early game, I've talked about this before. You're basically just shooting fish in a barrel. Everyone's got 100 health. You've got an easily spammable weapon with splash damage that can do 100 damage. You win at life. Now, This is where we're at the fun part. Probably maybe why you clicked on this video. Because there's two weapons now that we're at that I might even argue are SS tiered, but we won't get into that. So coming in at number 2, this was a very tough call. It's going to be the tactical SMG. So the legendary variant, let's focus on that. 21 damage a shot, 35 bullets in the mag, with a damage per second unmatched to any other weapon in Fortnite at 273. Truly the greatest shredder of all time. So, if this weapon was so good, so overpowered in Season 10, what is better than it? Well, this is up for debate, but I actually think that, and coming in at number 1, it is the combat shotgun. See, the thing that makes the combat shotgun, in my opinion, better than the tactical SMG is take two really good players. One gets a gold tac SMG, the other gets a gold combat. I think the person with the gold combat is almost always going to win. Now, sure, the tactical SMG was a more friendly weapon to use, but the combat shotgun was so good in the hands of a skilled player. It only had a DPS of 148, but you could devastate people with this thing, and it even had fairly good range. So I think that this one is certainly up for debate, and I'm absolutely open to hear what you guys think, but personally I do think that the combat shotgun is the best weapon that's in the vault right now, and even better than the tac SMG. And anyways, that's our list. So guys, thank you so much for making it all the way through in this one. I know it was a long one, so I really appreciate it. If you guys do want to check out my merch, again, top link down in the description. This is what it looks like, except this is just going to be a little bit smaller. And of course, buy one, because otherwise I will light you on fire. Thank you guys again. I will talk to you later, and peace out, you freaking nerds. And thank you, Roman, because this is the second recording in a row that's 40 minutes. You are a legend. Peace.